All right, IR enthusiasts, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at something that's, well, it's not just a key part of political science, but it could really be a game changer for those of you prepping for the UPSC International Relations paper. We're talking about behavioralism.
Yeah, behavioralism, it really did try to shake things up in how we look at and understand politics.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean just imagine trying to study politics using the same kind of tools and methods they use in, like physics or chemistry.
So instead of like, I don't know, poring over old documents and historical records or debating political philosophy, we're talking about actually observing how people behave in the political world. Is that what you're saying?
You've got it. That's the heart of it.
So it's almost like political science meets uh, sociology.
You're right on the money. Behavioralism, it came about from this desire, this real push to make political science more scientific, and it borrowed a lot from positivism, which was, well, it was a pretty big deal in the early 20th century.
Positive.
Yeah, thinkers like, well, there was Comte in the Vienna Circle.
Right, right.
They were all about empirical observation,
Huh.
and data-driven analysis, like hard evidence.
Okay, so for our listeners out there who are getting ready for the UPSC, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
You see, you're not just expected to know all the historical facts and figures.
Right.
You have to understand all the different ways, the different lenses we use to look at and study
And
politics.
there are a lot.
Oh, there are. And behavioralism, it offers a very specific, and let's be honest, sometimes controversial lens.
It does.
So how would you explain that to someone who's, maybe just starting to learn about this?
Okay, so behavioralism, it introduced this idea that you could actually find patterns in political behavior, almost like the laws of physics.
Wow, that's a pretty big idea.
Yeah, and it stressed rigorous testing using quantitative methods, so think statistics here, and then building, systematic frameworks for your research.
It sounds incredibly thorough and systematic, I have to admit.
Yeah, it was all about that.
But I'm guessing, I have to guess, that this kind of approach, it probably wasn't without its critics, right?
Oh, of course not.
To try and like quantify something as complex and as unpredictable as how humans behave, especially in the political arena, it seems like there would have to be some challenges there, right?
Right. You're right to be a little skeptical
Right.
because one of the biggest criticisms was that this intense focus on data and just the things you could measure in behavior, it led to kind of a mindless empiricism.
Mindless empiricism.
Yeah, it's like they were oversimplifying all the subtle nuances of politics and they were kind of, well, ignoring the importance of theory.
So it's like, I don't know, it's like you're trying to understand a Shakespearean play, but you're only counting how many times the characters walk on and off the stage.
That's a good one.
You might completely miss the whole point of the story.
Exactly, and that's where critics like Easton came in.
Okay, Easton.
He pointed out some pretty serious flaws with this approach.
So what were some of the things that Easton felt behavioralism missed when it came to understanding the really messy world of international relations?
Well, okay, one of his biggest concerns was this idea that behavioralism was just too detached from the real world, the reality of politics.
Okay, so how so?
Well, it's like trying to fit, global power dynamics or like the outbreak of war into these neat and predictable models.
Yeah, I could see where that might get a little tricky.
Right, it's hard to account for every single factor.
Definitely.
So he argued that it often ignored the role of human agency, the individual choices and actions that can completely change the course of history. Think about something like the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right, right.
A purely behavioralist approach, it might miss the really important role that the individual leaders played, their personalities and their choices.
Right.
And those choices averted a nuclear disaster.
Okay, I'm starting to get a clearer picture here. Try to look at something as complex and as multifaceted as international relations only through a behavioralist lens, it could lead to some pretty big blind spots.
It could, definitely. And this brings us to another major critique, and this one's especially important for all our listeners out there who are studying political theory for their UPSC exams.
Oh, so now we're getting to the good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
The real meat of the matter,
Mhm.
this is the stuff that can really make the difference between a so-so answer on the UPSC and a really great one.
Yeah, and this one comes from Germino.
Germino.
Yeah, he argued that this whole idea of trying to be value-free, like behavioralism was trying to do, it was actually just a way of pushing a certain set of values.
Wait, so trying to be objective was actually a way of imposing a worldview?
That's what Germino was saying.
Okay, that's a pretty bold statement, I have to say.
It is, and he believed that real political theory, with its focus on ethical principles and what he called the principles of right order.
Principles of right order.
Right, he thought that was crucial. It was absolutely necessary to protect human freedom.
And to prevent this kind of like, I don't know, almost scientific control.
Exactly. That's what he was worried about.
So it wasn't just some theoretical debate about, what are the right research methods to use.
No.
It goes much deeper than that.
Oh, for sure.
It goes to the very core of what political science should even be about, what its purpose is, what its values are, and how those values affect, real-world politics.
That's the heart of it.
And this whole debate between those who were, all for the scientific approach of behavioralism, like Laswell and Kaplan, and those who defended the importance of traditional political theory, like Germino and Sabine. Well, that debate is a key part of understanding how political science has evolved.
Yeah, it is.
It's fascinating, and it's this kind of, back and forth between different schools of thought. That's the kind of nuanced understanding that the UPSC examiners are really looking for.
It's true. They want to see that you can think critically.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but it's also important to acknowledge the impact that behavioralism had on the field, right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it pushed political scientists to be more careful with their data.
Right.
To test their hypotheses and to really think systematically about how to study political stuff.
It's about understanding, the strengths and the weaknesses of different approaches.
Absolutely.
And being able to apply them thoughtfully to real-world events.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like our deep dive into this world of behavioralism is, well, we're just getting started, I think.
It feels that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's always more to explore.
There is.
And we'll get to that. Okay, so picking up where we left off, let's unpack some of these criticisms of behavioralism a little more.
Okay.
But, one thing to keep in mind, it's not like the critics were, completely against using empirical research.
Right.
I mean, even way back when thinkers like Aristotle and Machiavelli, they used observations about political behavior.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In their work.
Yeah.
The problem was, well, this almost like single-minded focus on what you could actually observe, and they kind of ignored the broader theoretical analysis.
So it wasn't about, rejecting data altogether.
Yeah.
It was more about finding that right balance.
Yeah, that's it. It's like trying to study the human body, but you're only looking at, how it moves on the outside.
Right.
You're not paying attention to all the stuff underneath, like the skeleton or the circulatory system or the nervous system.
Right. You're missing the whole inner workings.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a great analogy.
So the critics, they said that this emphasis on, data that's easy to quantify, well, it led researchers to just focus on whatever was easy to measure.
Yeah, whatever was convenient.
Right, and whatever they could plug into their statistical models.
Right.
Even if those things weren't really the most theoretically important parts of the whole, political puzzle.
So it becomes this question of what are you missing? What are you leaving out of the picture?
Exactly.
And, for our listeners who are getting ready for the UPSC IR paper.
Yeah.
Think about how this could play out in international relations.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
If you're just looking at the easy data, like, trade figures or military deployments, you might miss the stuff that's underneath the surface.
The deeper stuff.
Yeah, like the cultural tensions or like the historical grievances, the stuff that's really driving the conflict.
Exactly. You got to look deeper.
And this ties into another big criticism, right?
Yeah.
The neglect of human agency.
Right, that's a big one.
By just focusing on all those external factors that, influence behavior. Some argued that behavioralism completely failed to capture the role of individual choices and values and intentions, all the things that shape political outcomes.
That's right. It's not all just external forces.
So imagine trying to apply like a purely behavioralist approach to something like the non-aligned movement.
Okay, yeah.
You might focus on stuff like the Cold War pressures or the economic aid packages.
The stuff that's easy to measure.
Right. But then you miss all those personal convictions and ideological commitments of leaders like Nehru or Nasser or Tito.
Those guys were driven by their beliefs.
Yeah, they really were. And they shaped the whole movement.
Exactly.
And those individual choices, those motivations, you can't always quantify those.
You can't put a number on them.
But they're essential if you want to understand how global politics really works.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's dig a little deeper into Germino's critique.
All right, Jimino.
He went beyond just the methods of behavioralism.
Right.
He was arguing that this pursuit of being value-free,
Yeah.
it was like a sneaky way of promoting a very specific set of values.
It's sneaky, right?
It is. It's like the values of a society that could be, you know, controlled and manipulated like a science experiment.
It's a little unsettling, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like we're all just blab rats.
And Germino, he saw this as a really dangerous path.
He did.
He argued that political theory, with its focus on, ethical principles and those principles of right order,
Those are important.
they are. And he thought they were absolutely crucial for protecting human freedom.
Yeah, making sure we don't end up as those lab rats.
Exactly. Preventing that kind of technocratic control.
It's a slippery slope.
It is. So it's not just, academics debating about research methods.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It gets to the heart of, well, what should political science even be about?
What's its purpose?
Exactly. What are its values? And how do those values affect real-world politics?
Yeah, that's the big question.
And for UPSC aspirants, this is huge.
Yeah, this is important.
It shows how crucial it is to be able to really critically examine the assumptions behind different schools of thought in political science.
You can't just accept things at face value.
You can't, it's not about, blindly accepting or rejecting a specific approach.
Right.
It's about understanding its strength, its weaknesses, and, where its blind spots are.
You got to be able to analyze it.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the criticisms of behavioralism.
Well, yeah.
But it's important to acknowledge, it did have an impact on the field.
It did. It really did.
It pushed political scientists to be more rigorous in how they use data.
And how they test their ideas.
Yeah, to think more systematically about how to study political things.
That's true.
It's true. Despite its limitations, behavioralism left a mark.
Yeah, a lasting legacy.
And understanding that, well, it's crucial for anyone studying political science, especially for those getting ready for the UPSC exam.
It's all part of the bigger picture.
Okay, so let's change gears a little bit.
Okay, what do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about the role of political theory. In a world where, well, data analysis and all these quantitative methods are becoming, they're becoming more and more important.
It's the age of data.
It is. So how did Germino see the relationship between, these seemingly very different approaches?
This is where Germino's defense of political theory gets really interesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
He argued that understanding these principles of right order, it wasn't just about, subjective opinions or just philosophers, sitting around thinking about stuff.
Right.
It was a serious intellectual pursuit.
Oh, wow.
It was grounded in human experience, and you could actually test it and verify it.
So it's not like, you have to choose one or the other.
No.
It's not like data-driven analysis versus theoretical reflection.
They both matter.
You both have a role to play.
Absolutely.
If you want to understand the complexities of politics,
You need both.
you need both.
And for our UPSC audience, this means being able to, bring these different approaches together.
Synthesize them.
Yeah, you need to be comfortable with, the quantitative tools,
Right, the number.
but also with the deeper theoretical frameworks that help you make sense of all those numbers.
Right, it's about seeing the whole picture.
That's it.
Okay, all this talk about, the science of politics, it makes me wonder
Yeah, what's that?
if behavioralism was trying to make political science more scientific.
Right.
Can we ever really study politics in a way that's completely value-free?
That's a tough one.
Can we really, separate our own beliefs, our biases, from how we analyze what's happening in politics?
It's a question that political scientists have been wrestling with forever.
It's like, I don't know, it's like trying to take gravity out of a physics experiment.
It's always there.
It is. It's always there in the background, affecting the results, even if you don't see it.
Right, and with political science, even the choice of what you're going to study,
Right.
what data you're going to use.
Right, what you're even going to collect.
Yeah, and then how you're going to interpret all that data, it's all shaped by your values and how you think the world works.
And Germino, he'd probably say that trying to pretend that you're value-free,
Yeah,
that's just a way of hiding the assumptions that are shaping your analysis.
like sweeping them under the rug.
It's better to just, admit that values are there,
Be upfront about it.
be upfront,
Yeah.
and then really engage with them critically.
That's the key.
And for everyone out there getting ready for the UPSC, this means, it means being aware of your own biases,
recognizing them.
Yeah, understanding the historical and philosophical context of all these different schools of thought.
It's all connected.
It is, and being able to evaluate the arguments you're reading without just, accepting them at face value.
Don't just take things for granted.
Exactly. So it's not just about, memorizing facts and figures.
There's more than that.
It's about developing that critical thinking part of your brain.
That muscle.
That muscle, that ability to really look closely at an argument, figure out the assumptions behind it.
The hidden stuff.
Yeah, and then come to your own conclusions.
Informed conclusion.
Informed conclusions, and that's what's really going to make you stand out in the UPSC exam.
Those are the skills they're looking for.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
This has been a really great deep dive
It has.
into the fascinating and sometimes confusing world of behavioralism.
There's a lot to unpack there.
There is. We've looked at its origins, its core principles, all the big criticisms against it, and the mark it left on political science.
It's legacy.
Its legacy.
Right.
But remember, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, there's always more to learn.
There is. So I really encourage all of you to go check out the work of these thinkers we've been talking about.
Easton, Germino, Lasswell, Kaplan.
These guys, they really wrestled with these really tough questions.
They did, and their work is still relevant today.
It is. And reading their stuff, it'll not only help you understand behavioralism better.
Deeper understanding.
Yeah, but it'll also give you a wider perspective on all the different ways we can approach the study of politics.
There's no one right way.
And don't forget to connect what you're learning to what's happening in the world today.
The real world.
Yeah, look for examples of where behavioralism's ideas, they work.
Where they make sense.
And where they don't.
Where they fall short.
That's how you bridge the gap between theory and practice.
And that's what the UPSC is all about.
Okay, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into behavioralism.
I hope you enjoyed it.
I know I did. We explored its origins, its key ideas, the criticisms, its lasting impact.
It's been a journey.
It has. But remember, keep asking those questions.
Keep learning.
Keep pushing yourself.
Expand those boundaries.
And if you found this deep dive helpful, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more political science explorations.
We'll see you next time. Until then, happy studying and best of luck on your UPSC journey.